Welcome to Realist Watch Reviews. I've got a special video today. It's my first San Martin review. This brand has been gaining popularity over the last couple of years, and I finally decided to try it when they released this Milsub homage. Now, this is not a paid promotion. This is my own personal watch, which I purchased for $219 US from watchdives.com. For that price point, it really packs in some great features. So let's give this watch a detailed review, see if I made a good choice, and if this is indeed the Milsub homage to get. Now let's start with the dimensions. This watch measures 39 millimeters at the bezel. The case is actually 38 millimeters. It has a lug-to-lug of 46 millimeters and a thickness of 13 millimeters up to the domed sapphire crystal with clear AR coating. So far, these are ideal dimensions for those of us who enjoy compact or mid-sized dive watches, and it only gets better from there. It's got a 20 millimeter lug width, and the bracelet tapers down to 16 millimeters, and it goes back up to 18 millimeters at the clasp. Now this one weighs in at 132 grams, sized for my 6.5 inch wrist. I do have a couple of issues with this bracelet and the clasp, which I'll cover towards the end of the review, along with showing you guys a wrist shot and of course a loom shot of the lovely BGW9. So stick around and do like and subscribe if you find this video helpful and would like to see more of my content. That would be much appreciated as I try to grow my channel. Now let's take a closer look at the finishing of this case. It's got a nice high quality brushed finish on top of the lugs and brushing along the sides of the case. It's also got a polished chamfer that runs along the length of the case. Now the brushing and polishing all looks very high quality and lives up to all of the hype surrounding San Martin that I've been hearing about over the last couple of years. The same thing can be said about the dial. The enamel rich black dial color and the nicely polished applied indices look very nicely done and nice and high quality. The indices sit nice and tall and have a good amount of loom, which we'll see in the loom shot towards the end of the video. The handset is also polished, and again the hands are a perfect size. The hour hand is nice and big and legible, and the minute hand reaches all the way to the minute tracker. Sometimes you find AliExpress watches where the handset is too small, and that is definitely not the case here. The size of the indices is also nice and large, like you would find on a maxi dial Submariner. There's a nicely printed minute tracker around the dial, same color as the text and logo. The bezel insert is ceramic. It looks nice and high quality with crisp, clear printing all the way around and a loom pip embedded in the triangle. Everything lines up perfectly with the dial, and really everything here comes together in a nice cohesive look, and they really seem to have pulled off a modern twist on the Milsub with the enamel black dial, applied indices, and ceramic bezel. Now speaking of the bezel, let's check out the bezel action. So I'll let you hear the action. It feels nice and clicky. It's a touch louder than I would have expected, but it does feel like it requires just the right amount of force to turn, and it doesn't accidentally turn if you bump your wrist. It does have a little bit of backplay, but not enough to really make you feel like it's a poor quality bezel. The finishing also does not have any sharp edges. It's nice and easy to grip. And in fact, I really do like the design of this bezel. It's not as blingy as the Rolex coin edge design, and it's actually, it gives the watch a more sporty and tool watch type of an appearance. It's also nicely sized in terms of how thin it is in proportion to the case. Now this guy is running a Seiko NH35 movement, and it's been running at plus 8.4 seconds per day, which is not bad at all. And speaking of the movement, let's check out the crown action. The crown, as you can see, has no crown guards, and the crown is signed with the hex San Martin logo. Crown is really easy to grip and unwind. Unwinding action feels nice and solid. Winding action feels nice and smooth. Let me click that in. So here you can, hopefully the camera's picking that up. Feels nice and smooth. Now it is a NH35, so it does have a ghost date position. If I pull it there, it's clicked into the ghost date position. So as you can see, nothing happening there. And then if I pull it all the way out, I can adjust the time. Pushing it back in, nice click, and it screws back in nicely. If I can actually do it with the tripod in front of me, here we go. So it screws back in nice and smooth, and it does give you some confidence in the listed 200 meters water resistance. Now, in case you're thinking this sounds too good to be true, well, not everything is perfect, and we'll get into some of the negatives now. When you start handling the watch, you do start to feel that there are some sharp edges on the case, especially towards the ends, near the ends of the lugs there. And even on the bracelet, there are some sharp edges on the sides. Now, this is something that I noticed in the unboxing right away, and I was really expecting it to be uncomfortable, but surprisingly, it has not been bad at all. The case, I don't feel digging into my wrist much at all, as it really sits on the hump of the case back, so you're not really making direct contact with these edges. The bracelet, on the other hand, does cause a little bit of discomfort. You can feel the sharpness on your wrist, especially if the watch is moving around. If your wrist swells throughout the day, it will dig into your wrist a little bit more and cause some discomfort. Now, I wouldn't say this is a deal breaker, but definitely an area for San Martin to improve upon and for you to be aware of if you're thinking about buying this watch. I did also have a couple of instances where the clasp closing mechanism actually pulled some arm hairs, and I believe it's this center section of the clasp. There are also some unfinished surfaces on the inside of the clasp in these surfaces here. Hopefully the camera is able to pick that up. Let me make sure the focus is there. So there are some unmachined surfaces there, which is not that big of a deal, as that's mostly a hidden section of the watch. Now, there are also some sharp edges on the clasp itself, especially on this side, on these corners. So that's also something to watch out for, and something that really San Martin can improve upon. Also, the logo feels a little bit rough to the touch on the surface. Now, with that being said, the bracelet finishing does look really great. It matches the case almost perfectly. The end link fitment is nice and tight. There's almost no gap between the case and the end links. The links also articulate nicely. You can see the first link articulates in both directions, and the links do articulate to give you a nice drape on the wrist. Now, the bracelet links are held together by screws, and I did not apply the Loctite to lock the screws in place, so I do have one screw that's backing out on me, but otherwise the links were pretty easy to size. The other thing to note is that the lume on the indices and hands is not a absolutely perfect match. It's pretty close. It's about 95% match, but the indices have a slightly more off-white color than the handset. And the crystal does attract some smudges, which I find myself wiping throughout the day. The other thing is more of a subjective thing, but I'm not a big fan of the hex logo. The printed hex logo on this dial just looks a little bit off to me, and I don't believe an applied logo would help. I think it's just a personal preference of mine that I don't care much for the logo. It does have the hex logo on the dial, crown, and clasp. I know in recent times they've had watches where the logos don't all match, so that this one does check that box. It also has, as I mentioned, the 4 micro adjust clasp. Now to give you guys a quick wrist shot, and just while we're here, I can also give you a quick size comparison to other 38mm watches. So here we go. Sits really nicely on the wrist. I have to give San Martin credit for designing a great looking case, bezel, and bracelet. It's visually it looks great. It looks like a more expensive watch, and the fitment on wrist is great. There's no overhang, and it sits nice and thin at 13mm. I think it's a great thickness, and that includes the domed crystal. So fitment, I have no issues. I was able to get a good fit with the clasp and the 4 micro adjusts. And we'll give a quick size comparison just because I happen to have a 38.5mm Seiko Solar diver sitting close by. So there you can see the Seiko dial definitely looks smaller. And here's the side profiles. And here's the other side. Totally different type of a look. Of course, the Seiko has these really chunky looking lugs. I much prefer the design of the San Martin case. And another 38mm watch that I happen to have lying around is actually this much cheaper Timex. And there you can see again, the Timex also looks smaller compared to the San Martin as far as the dial size goes. And then there you can see the side profile. Of course, the Timex is just a quartz movement. But yeah, a review for this guy coming up soon. Timex making some interesting timepieces these days. Alright guys, well hopefully you found this review helpful. If you did, do like and subscribe. And as I mentioned, we'll end it with a loom shot so you can have a look at the BGW9 loom. And it has that nice blue tone. And we'll just adjust the time here so you can actually see the hour and minute hand. There we go. Alright guys, we'll end it there. Thank you for watching.